Matt McLain will be the latest test in how well the Reds evaluate their own roster.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Jeff Carr, and on today's Locked On Reds podcast, a little bit later on, I'm going to tell you why I see another unfair situation brewing for Brandon Williamson. In just a few minutes, I will tell you why, or what the contract for Tyler Stephenson should look like and how the Reds can get it done. But we will begin with Matt McLain, because Matt McLain is everyone's favorite dude to fix it. Everyone's favorite dude to bounce back, including my own. He was a guy that came into this season as an X factor for the Reds. He has been a no factor for the Reds. Absolutely nothing has happened. I mean, he had 2 days in June where he hit 3 homers in 2 days, and we thought maybe there was something there. But overall, he's gotten worse. Year over year over year. 2023, of course, is what everybody thinks about. But by the end of this year, by the time we get to next season, whatever that looks like, there will have been people who have gone through high school since he was good. I really feel like that's something that we have to understand here. Like, this is not something that happened yesterday. This is not something that we saw last month. Matt McLain has struggled for a while now. I don't see how Matt McLain can prove between now and the end of this season that he needs another contract from the Reds in 2027. Now, the reason that I say another contract is because he's arbitration eligible. Those guys sign 1-year contracts, and then they get a brand new contract the next year. Most of the time, there's a raise. It's very rare that a guy gets a pay decrease or barely any increase at all. So we're looking at Matt McLain probably getting a raise that will make him cost the Reds somewhere between $3 and $4 million in his next season, whatever that is. I feel like that needs to be understood here, because with the way that Matt McLain has played, you would say, okay, let's see if he can get a bench role. Let's see if he can get some sort of platoon role or something, and see if he can figure it out. If he can get hot again, then maybe you can keep rolling with him and get him back out there. But the Reds are going to need to pay him close to $4 million for that to be the case. The Reds have spent more money on less, for sure, in recent memory here, but this is a test for Nick Krall in the front office. And if it's somebody else other than Nick Krall, I would love that. That feels like a pipe dream at this point. Feels like we're just going to keep doing this whole status quo thing with the Reds, but I digress. The point is, if the Reds front office wants anyone to take them seriously, they have to seriously evaluate Matt McLain going into next year. They cannot think of the good times that were in 2023 and say that is what we are signing for 2027. They must look at the last 2 years and understand who he has become. In fact, because everybody loves to do this when it comes to, somebody saying, well, you should get rid of it. Okay, well, who are you going to replace him with? There's going to be 2 guys on the open market, on the free agent market, that I believe will cost less than $3 to $4 million next year that the Reds could look at. Let's do a blind comparison. Let's look at Matt McLain. So this is over the last 2 seasons that I'm looking at here. The last 2 seasons, Matt McLain has a batting average of .211, an on-base percentage of .298, and a slugging percentage of .344. That slash line has built together a weighted runs created plus an overall value as a hitter of 75, or 25% below the league average hitter. And he's done that in 925 plate appearances. I don't know another baseball team that is giving him that many, with as little as he has produced. And so let's look at these blind comparisons here. 2 players that I think will cost less than Matt McLain and can play second base defensively reasonably well. If not slightly below average, but they're not as good a glove as Matt McLain, but they're much better bats. Player B, blind comparison to Matt McLain. His batting average, 269. That's 58 points better. His on-base percentage is 308. It's not fantastic, but it's still better than Matt McLain's 298. And his slugging percentage is 50 points higher, 55 points higher to be exact, at 399. His WRC plus is 92, 17% better than Matt McLain. And he's only done that in 486 plate appearances over the last 2 years because this guy has been correctly evaluated by his team and has been more of a platoon player. But you'd probably pick player B. If you're being honest with yourself, you're picking player B over Matt McLain. Or you might pick player C. He's got a better on base at 322, worse average at 228, but that's worse than player B, still better than Matt McLain's 211. And then player C's slugging percentage of 343 is right there with Matt McLain. However, his overall value as a hitter over the last 2 seasons, WRC plus is 88. And that's in 625 plate appearances. Would you like to know who I'm comparing Matt McLain to? You're going to laugh at one of them. Player B is Ildemaro Vargas. He's playing for the Arizona Diamondbacks currently. He is due to be a free agent. And player C is Jonathan India. Jonathan India, of course, coming off of a big shoulder injury. Not likely that I would recommend the Reds going after Jonathan India in free agency this year, but he'll be available. And he'll likely be available on a prove-it deal. Likely be available for less than $3 to $4 million. Ildemaro Vargas is making less than $2 million this year. I can't envision him commanding a ton of money on the free agent market. Probably somewhere close to, $3 to $4 million, probably less than that. And those guys have put together better production in the last 2 seasons than Matt McLain. I really think we need to get outside the Queen City bubble when we're talking about Matt McLain, because we all remember moments of 2023. And we all remember flashes of memories and moments over the last couple of seasons where we're like, that right there, he did that. Maybe that is the sign. None of them have been signs. I want to make this clear. The Reds need to put together a good roster. Matt McLain has not been part of a good roster. And they have to be honest with themselves when they're evaluating this, because they haven't been very honest with themselves about a lot of evaluations. Some of that has been monetarily driven. I don't know that the Reds have the stomach to sign $30 million over to Key Brian Hayes to walk away. I think other teams might have, but the Reds don't. And that's fine. I understand that from their financial perspective, that feels very imprudent. However, they've made multiple imprudent decisions over the last couple of years. You cannot compound those imprudent decisions by making another one and bringing back Matt McLain. We keep hearing about how hamstrung the Reds' roster resources are. Right? And whatever the economics of baseball look like after the new CBA is figured out, Rob Manfred willing that there's going to be some sort of salary floor here that the Reds have to adhere to. But as it stands, the Reds are going to look at their roster and say, this is how much we have to spend on it. Are they really going to tie up $3 to $4 and likely closer to $4 million in Matt McLain again? Because if they are, then they are. It's the Einstein's theory of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results. We've seen it now for 2 years, almost 1,000 plate appearances that I just told you about. That Matt McLain has been worse than Jonathan India or Ildemaro Vargas. That's to say nothing of other second basemen I would rather them invest in, a la Luis Arias or, some other guys like that. The Reds must move on from Matt McLain next year. They must. Coming up next, I'll tell you how the Reds can get a new contract done with Tyler Stephenson. A big thank you to our friends over at Amazon for this limited break. This back-to-school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy the back-to-school shopping experience can be. It starts with just a few items on the list, and then suddenly you're shopping for supplies, clothes, lunch gear, tech, and about 10 other things that you didn't see coming. It adds up fast. I mean, when you're buying supplies and you find yourself asking how a calculator became one of the more expensive items in the cart, look, I wasn't expecting math to cost so much before school even began. That feels like there's a life lesson in there somewhere. I'm still trying to figure that one out, though. Or when you start shopping for a few back-to-school essentials and realize how quickly that list grows. Supplies, clothes, lunch gear, headphones, it just keeps on going. That's why finding low prices on all the things you need makes such a big difference this time of year. So remember, with Amazon's low back-to-school prices, just spend less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids. Thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your day, our first listen, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the country. Lock in by joining the Locked On Reds Everydayer Club. Gets you ad-free podcast episodes and get you a monthly exclusive chat with Steve and myself. More information to come with that after Steve gets back from gallivanting around Europe. Go to lockedonreds.supercast.com or just tap the link in the show description down below for your free 7-day trial. All right. Yesterday, I said that the Reds must sign Tyler Stephenson, and I laid out all the reasons why. I'm not going to rehash them. I would encourage you to go check that show out to see exactly why I laid this out. I also saw some folks saying, well, you were just advocating for them to trade him. Yes, because of what they could get for him. The reason that you trade somebody like him is because he brings value to the roster that he is on. The fact that the Reds did not trade him, they should now not let him walk for nothing in free agency. They should try to keep him. And also, they don't have a plan at catcher. I was also kind of hoping that part of the trade deadline would be to trade Stephenson and then bring in a catcher. Whatever. I digress. The point is, I want them to sign Tyler Stephenson. I told you why yesterday. Now I want to focus on what that will look like, because I didn't quite go over the contract parameters and how I think the Reds could get him. And I believe that I have an idea. I mean, I'm not the guy that's going to be negotiating this contract by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that there's a good framework in a 3-year, $30 million deal. Hear me out on this. The Reds are paying Tyler Stephenson $6.8 million this season, and that was through the arbitration process. Remember, we talked a lot about this coming into 2026. It was very odd. They were fighting over a very small amount of money. The Reds thought one number. Tyler Stephenson thought a number. It seemed a bit minuscule, but it also seemed to be a microcosm of their relationship. That is why you must offer him more to A, repair that relationship. Because whatever has happened there needs a little bit of extra something. You're not going to get Tyler Stephenson on some sort of hometown discount, or it's not his hometown, but, you know, the team he came up with discount. You're not going to get him on some sort of cheap deal. You're going to have to pay for the damaged relationship that the Reds have with him. And the way that the front office treated these negotiations early on, they are now going to have to make up for that. But I believe that this is an easy way to do that. As much as I don't think it's prudent to tie up $3 to $4 million in Matt McLain, I think it's very prudent to tie up $10 million a year in Tyler Stephenson. This would also make Tyler Stephenson a top 7 catcher as far as earnings go on a per year basis. Looking at his company, I mean, he'd be right behind Alejandro Kirk from the Toronto Blue Jays, who's making $11.6 million next year. Sean Murphy's at $12.1. Salvador Perez, who has been awesome for a very long time for the Royals, $12.5 million. Will Smith at $14 million. The Dodgers just throw all of the money at everyone, and they get whoever they want. JT Realmuto has had an amazing career in Philadelphia. He's making $15 million. And Cal Raleigh leads all catchers with $17.5 because of his amazing season in 2025. Don't look at his 2026 numbers. I digress. I don't think that Tyler Stephenson needs to beat all of those guys and make more money than them. However, he does deserve a raise for the performance that he has put together for this team and the fact that the Reds need somebody to bridge the gap between now and Alfredo Duno. And they don't need somebody for 1 year. Quite frankly, I think 2 years might even still be pushing it. You might get Alfredo Duno somewhere in 2028. But how much are you really going to count on him to be the everyday catcher in 2028? That feels like a lot to put on him. I'm not really counting on that till 2029. So this would then make Tyler Stephenson kind of the Tucker Barnhart, like the role that Tucker Barnhart had whenever Tyler Stephenson came up. And I think that this works in that way. But the Reds also have to pay for that mended fence that they damaged with their poor negotiating skills with Tyler Stephenson. They also need to do this so that he signs this before the offseason, so that they retain him before he ever touches free agency. Because if he hits free agency, Tyler Stephenson will be right there with Ryan Jeffers, the current Twins catcher, as the most sought-after catchers on the open market. Like, there's no one else that's even close. The only guy that would have an argument is if the Brewers decide to not pick up their club option on William Contreras. William Contreras has a team option for $14.5 million next year. I think he's worth every penny of that, which then would vault him up into the top 7. So, yeah, we'd have to discuss that. But still, Tyler Stephenson would be a top 8 catcher as far as earnings go. But the Brewers should pick up that option on William Contreras. Wouldn't expect him to be a free agent. So then the top 2 free agent catchers are Ryan Jeffers and Tyler Stephenson. Neither one of those guys got traded at the deadline because I don't think that teams wanted to pay what their current clubs thought they were worth. Going on the open market, though, there's going to be a bidding war. And when there's a bidding war, Nick Krall runs away. He's not going to win a bidding war for Tyler Stephenson. So you got to give him more money right now to keep him from going to free agency. You got to give him more money right now to keep him on the team, to fix the relationship that the Reds damaged with him. And I really feel like this also pays for that positional demand. Because the other side of this coin is, okay, let's say the Reds do what I don't want them to do, and they just forego signing Tyler Stephenson. They just say, you know what? We'll get somebody else. We won't have to pay $10 million a year, and we'll be better off for it. I disagree, because the free agent catchers this upcoming offseason are just like Travis d'Arnaud. I mean, is he going to keep playing? He's not your everyday catcher. Austin Hedges, he's not your everyday catcher. Just ask our friends over at Locked On Guardians. Jake Rogers coming from Boston, don't think so. Jonah Heim, James McCann, maybe a couple of years ago. Christian Vasquez, maybe a couple of years ago. I just don't see it. And so you're basically going to go into next year, if you sign any one of those guys and pair them with Jose Treviño, you're saying that it's a catcher by committee, and you've got 2 catchers that neither one of them you want to play 4 out of every 5 days. You're just going to be like, flip a coin, whatever. I don't love that plan. Give me Tyler Stephenson. Make sure he's here for a couple of years. Make sure he's paid for lots of different things. 3 years, $30 million. So keep him right now. Go do it. I hope, Nick, Brad Metter, hope you guys are listening. You go do it. Like right now. This team has a lot of needs, and that's kind of why I wanted to start with Matt McLain, because whether or not Matt McLain is here, if the Reds pay Matt McLain $3 to $4 million next season, you know what they need? A second baseman. Matt McLain does not fix that. Someone else will need to. Tyler Stephenson fixes the need at catcher if you keep him. And if you lose him, I don't know what the next plan is. Because it can't be Jose Treviño and then somebody of Will Banfield or whoever. It can't be that. That cannot be the plan for catcher for the Reds. for the next couple of seasons. So the Reds need to give a 3-year, $30 million contract to Tyler Stephenson yesterday. Speaking of roster management, coming up next, there is another unfair opportunity that is looking Brandon Williamson square in the face. Reds fans, if you think you know who's hitting a dinger tonight, you got to head on over to FanDuel because they're giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. You just make your pick for who you think is going to hit a homer in their game. It's a free pick, by the way. And if you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the rest of the Major League Baseball season. Today's getaway day game here in Chicago, I really hope we see a home run. I hope we see more than 2 hits from the Reds lineup against Davis Martin and the rest of the White Sox pitching staff, but I think I'm going to pick Elly De La Cruz to lead one off. Feels like after a game like last night, Ellie's going to lead off the game with a homer. I think that's going to be my pick for the daily dinger over on FanDuel. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting homer today. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. I invite you to keep the conversation going with us after the show is over. You can follow me on X and on Twitter at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can follow Steve at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs over on X. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds on every social media platform out there. I heard something interesting on the broadcast. Jim Day was talking about an injury update for Brandon Williamson, and I'm a bit concerned as to how he closed this out, because Brandon Williamson pitched on Tuesday night. There was a rain delay that caused the game to get postponed, and they finished the game in Louisville on Wednesday afternoon. But that meant that Brandon Williamson only threw like 30-something pitches in game, and then threw another 30-something pitches in the bullpen. He threw about 65 pitches, is what Jim Day reported. His next start is slated to be Sunday for the Bats, next rehab start. And you would probably imagine he throws 80 to 85 pitches in that game. But Jim Day also brought up the possibility of another option, because the Reds have a doubleheader on Monday. They have no off days for the next week, and they play 5 games in 4 days against the Cardinals. And he said that there's a possibility Brandon Williamson could be called up, instead of pitching a rehab start on Sunday, called up to pitch on Monday. And I hate that idea. Brandon Williamson is a guy that has been done no favors by this team. He pitched a lot in 2023. It kind of felt like all throughout that season, David Bell didn't quite trust him to go a third time through the order. And not just specifically David Bell. Derek Johnson, of course, was a huge part of that. The front office was a huge part of it. They all make those decisions collectively. And so the Reds weren't comfortable with him pitching 3 times through the order, so he didn't throw a ton. And then in the next season, he got hurt. And he dealt with lots of injuries. And over the last 3 years, 2024, 2025, 2026, he has pitched a total of 42 1/3 innings in 3 years. This guy needs as much runway as possible for rehab to build him up, to make him strong, because he should be a big part of the Reds' rotation in 2027. He should be a favorite to land the number 5 spot in the Reds' rotation. But he's got to be healthy to do that. And I don't feel like this thing that the Reds have done this year with so many different guys, where they rush them through rehab to get them to the major leagues, is helping anybody out. I think Rhett Lauder is finally getting right. Like, he had a pretty decent outing on Wednesday night in Chicago. 5 1/3. He only gave up 7 hits and 2 runs. One of those was a solo shot, but and he had 4 strikeouts to 1 walk. But it's kind of felt like it's been a journey to get to this point for him, to where we're feeling better about Rhett Lauder in the rotation. If we do this with Brandon Williamson, it's likely that is how the rest of his season goes. Is just struggle after struggle after struggle as he works to build himself up to a pitch count that is tolerable for a starting pitcher every 5 days. And I don't want to see that. I want to see the Reds treat him as any other pitcher should be treated through the rehab process. Get him built up to a comfortable number of pitches and then call him up. Because what are the Reds playing for at this point? Let's be straight up honest right here, because I would love to say that there is some sort of pie in the sky chance of the Reds making the postseason, but there ain't. And I know that's great English, but there just ain't. They're not mathematically eliminated, but that's literally all you can say about their playoff chances at this point. And so if you're going to risk a guy's long-term health on a game, then you should really look long and hard in the mirror at yourselves. And I'm talking about the whole Reds organization here. Like, figure this out. Do not do wrong by Brandon Williamson. There's an easy way to go about this. Have a bullpen day for one of those doubleheader games, because it lines up fine as far as, every fifth day rest. And then if you want to call up Brandon Williamson next week, then we talk. But let him get at least one more start in Louisville. I'd prefer 2 more starts in Louisville, to be honest with you. But at this point, the Reds can keep on churning through the rotation just fine because Nick Lodolo looked healthy. Because as it stands, Andrew Abbott pitches today in the series finale in Chicago. Then you've got Burns, Singer, and Lodolo. Lodolo should pitch on Sunday against the Marlins. So then Monday should be another day for Rhett Lauder. And then the other game can just be a bullpen day where Chase Petty takes the lion's share of the innings. There. I just planned that out for them. Don't risk Brandon Williamson. Because I feel like a big part of the injury issues that he has dealt with, because remember, he was rushed earlier on this season. I talked about the Reds, rushing Rhett Lauder and the fact that he had a lot to deal with early on the season. Brandon Williamson was the same way. They said, spring training was enough. He's fine. I think ideally he would have been able to work his way through AAA and then get called up somewhere in the middle of May or June or whatever, had the rotation been a little bit more healthy. But like the Reds put the needs of the roster over the needs of the individual's health. And that didn't do him any favors because he's been on the 60-day IL because he got hurt again. Don't rush him back. I really think that would be such a horrible idea. And having watched how the Reds have managed different injuries over the years, I can see this going the wrong way. I can see them bringing him back. Maybe he pitches a couple of games, and then he gets hurt again. And then we're talking about an offseason of rehab and not a normal offseason where, he's building off of what he finished the season because, ideally he still gets a handful of starts here to end the season. I'm not saying that you shut him down completely. I'm just saying don't bring him back too quick. Because Jim Day, reporting that the Reds could bring him back on Monday, Jim Day's not just pulling that out of thin air. He's talked to somebody that's led him to believe that's a possibility. I really don't want to see the Reds do that because I really think that's a bad idea. And I think that they would be once again putting Brandon Williamson in an unfair position where it feels as though they've constantly put this dude in an unfair position for his entire career so far. His entire career being a grand total of 3 seasons, including, or 4 seasons if you include 2025 where he didn't play at all because of injury. They need to make sure he is right before he can help the team. Because this whole mantra of he will help the team and also be right, even though we're not sure if he's right, it just reeks of a team that doesn't have a plan. And the trade deadline sort of reeked of a team that didn't have a plan. And the fact that Tyler Stephenson is still unsigned reeks of I think you see where I'm going with that. Anyway, would love to see the Reds win this here rubber match. Hopefully you're checking out this episode before the Reds and White Sox game happens. Rough game last night. I know Tim Daniel has you covered on the Reds postcast after every single ball game, going live after the final out right here on the Locked On Reds YouTube page, and then shortly thereafter in the Locked On Reds audio feeds. Make sure you check him out. I'll be back with you again tomorrow as we look ahead. The Marlins are coming into town, and what we can expect from Chase Burns and what we can expect from another Nick Lodolo start. We'll get you set for the weekend that is on the next Locked On Reds podcast. Thanks so much for joining us here today, though. Now make sure you go make your second listen Locked On MLB if you're listening, or if you're watching, just hang on. I'm going to send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. Until next time, you know that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.